already. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Board of Directors, Superintendent Larios, and our guests, and those who are joining us online. Thank you for joining us this evening to our special board meeting today. It is now 5:47 p.m., and I will now call this meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We all have the agenda before us. If there aren't any changes, I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I second.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0 vote. Do we have public comment today, Jenny? Okay. So moving on to our work session, we have the Board Professional Development Plan Review. And we have our guest, Janet, who will be joining us and facilitating. So welcome. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay. Be a little loud.
Thank you all for having me again. Really excited to be here. So yes, can you put the PowerPoint up? Thanks. As your chair just mentioned, we're going to be this training is focusing on board professional development plan. Once that screen goes up, you will see. Perfect. Let's see if this works. Perfect. Love it when technology is on my side. All right. So board professional development plan. I have 90 minutes with y'all. And so just Jenny, you can help me when there's like 5 minutes left to keep me on score, on track. And so it's 5:49. All right. So as it says up there, today's objectives is to analyze and reflect on the board's performance to identify strengths and areas of growth and understand how board culture impacts student achievement. Really want to invite everyone to have open, honest conversations, myself included. I've been working with y'all for a while, some of you more than others. But as your facilitator, I want to make sure that I am giving you the tools and resources you need to be an effective, high-functioning board. That is the goal, so that your students are successful. So I know you have a board professional development plan, and we are going to get to that. But before that, I want to focus first on that analysis reflection piece. Again, identifying the strengths and areas of growth. And I'm going to give you my assessment as well, since I've been working with you now for 3 years, 2-3 years. So the last piece here of the objective is to evaluate and revise the board professional development plan for student success. So, what's working, what's not working with that plan, how can we prioritize it so that it's an efficient tool for you all to be an effective functioning board. So I'm going to dive right into it. I don't want to spend time. You all have had my trainings, and I can send you resources on why a board professional development plan matters. I'm here because I want to keep this board being a high-performing board. And you all know, and I'm going to be honest, as again, your facilitator, your third-party observer, there is some work to be done. Okay, so again, this is going to be an honest conversation. And this is not, I'm going to preface it, to place blame on anyone. This is so you can grow and improve so that your students here at Woodburn School District can succeed. All right, that is the focus here. So again, we are a team, myself included as your facilitator, because if I'm not doing something right, well, then we got to have that conversation, right? If I'm not giving you the resources, then I'm open to that feedback as well, because I really want you to be successful. I know you care about the students here at Woodburn School District, and I care about you all as well. And as a trainer, I want to see you succeed. I want you to be a high-functioning board. I want to be able to tell other boards, hey, they are a model board Go to them for information on vision-directed planning. Go to them on board culture and climate, okay? So with that, I'm going to give you my assessment. And again, this is just because I want you to improve and be a cohesive learning team. And this is based on the research, but I want to give you my assessment, whether you agree with me or not. You're going to have a moment to also share your feedback on areas of strength and areas of growth, and then tie it back to your board professional development plan. So here's what the research says are practices associated with negative impacts on student outcomes. Again, I'm a third-party observer, and it's, I want to make sure that I'm giving you good feedback so that we can get you to becoming a high-functioning board, okay? So the first one here is around, and these are the researchers behind it, but I've seen this as well in other ways, in other districts. I've been working with OSBA for 5 years, so I've worked with a lot of districts, so this isn't just you. So meetings less orderly, lack of respectful engagement, some individuals take up too much airtime. So here what I've seen is some need for understanding how to run effective meetings. I think that, again, you all care about your students. You want to have those conversations, look at data, and that's great. And I also know that you've created a monitoring plan and that may be starting to become a bit overwhelming. And so if my assessment is correct, let's have that conversation. And if that was my fault, I apologize, but we need to, again, move forward. And so if the monitoring plan maybe needs to be a little more focused, maybe there's too many measures, we can have that conversation. But I will say something that I think is super important, and if I haven't said this before, I'm going to say it now, is it's super important to have work sessions as standalone meetings, especially when you have, and that's why the professional development plan is important, because it will help you as a board determine what are the priority areas that we want to focus on and when can we build those throughout the year, right? And so standalone work sessions are really good. I don't recommend building an agenda on top of that. Sometimes if it's a consent agenda, that can be okay, but again, carving out that time and understanding what it means to run effective meetings, parliamentary procedure, the role of the chair, the role of the superintendent, all of that. Again, it's a team effort to run an effective meeting. It's not just, it's on all of you and individual board members as well to know what that looks like and what that means. So that's the first one. The second one that I want to highlight here, again, the highlighted areas are the ones that I think there's room for growth for your board. And again, you can agree to disagree with me and you'll have the opportunity to chime in here in a moment. Members seek to advance their own agendas. And I have it connected with this other one around anecdotes, bringing personal experiences to drive decisions instead of data. Now, this one is a really tricky, and I'm going to be really honest, can sometimes be really hard to remove your hat either as a parent, if you have kiddos at the district, or if you're getting a lot of concerns brought to you from staff, et cetera, the community. But it is really important, again, to make sure that you are staying informed. And so that kind of goes with understanding your roles and responsibilities. I think what I mean by that is being clear on roles and responsibilities around governance versus management. And there has been, I'm going to be honest here, there's been some turnover, so that could potentially be something. So how to get those newer board members up to speed. It is an election year. You may be changing board members or not. We don't know. But it is important to, and we're having this conversation so that you can be in a good spot. So if you do have new board members, how to get them up to speed, right? Because understanding, and it's not always black and white, I'll be the first to say it. It's not very easy to sometimes understand the difference between governance and management. But that one kind of goes, that's what the micromanagement one there is entailing. And they all kind of do connect. And again, this is the research that shows that if the practices associated with negative impacts on student outcomes. And then this one, less effective working relationships. As an observer, I think that there is work to be done at the individual level as a board with your relationship with the superintendent. And again, I think that comes down to that that piece there around understanding roles and responsibilities and setting clear expectations. I think your board has done great work where you have created board operating agreements, but I think now it's like how to put that into practice and keep working on that. And I think that can sometimes be a challenge when there are a lot of things happening, external factors, right? Education is evolving, whatever the concerns are at the time. So again, I am not trying to place blame, and I hope you aren't taking this criticism personally. I want to make sure that I am doing my due diligence as your trainer so that you improve and ultimately your students are successful, because I do care about this board. Okay, so it's coming from care. And again, just a reminder, all of this, right? Board impacts students, your behaviors, your individual, it trickles down, it's a causal chain. And I'm seeing this occurring. Again, it starts with individuals, but it's happening with the board. It then trickles into the district, culture and climate. And we don't want that. You don't want that dysfunction because it delays the work and it does impact. The research shows it. I just showed you some of those practices associated with impacting student achievement. Okay. Oops. What happened to my slide? Oops, Jenny, are you moving it? It's going. Can you go back to? No, let's go back. What's going on? Okay. Yep, go to the next one. Yeah. I don't know what happened to that slide. Can you go back? Well, that's okay, because that's the only thing I wanted to highlight in that slide. There's a couple other things. Go to number 5. It might be because it's on Google. Yeah, it's okay. Just go to it and I can talk about it. What, sorry?
Some of these slides are familiar because they're from your guys' board training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are. So this slide here, what it says is these are the attributes of high performing boards. And this is where the goal, right, where we want to be. And I wanted to specifically highlight this one. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but on the screen, it would say cohesive teaming. So learning together as a board team, demonstrating commitment, practicing unified governance, strong shared beliefs and values about the system and all students, right? So how do we get the board to becoming high performing? You can go to the next one, sorry. Or maybe I can. All right, so that was just my assessment. You can agree to disagree with me. I will not take any criticism to that. So how do we get the board to becoming high performing? Well, we're gonna be, sorry, I don't know why that formatting is happening, but we're gonna be doing that today. That's what this training is all about, right? So now I'm gonna ask you to chime in, whether you agree with what I just said. You can add those as the top 3 current challenges, but I want the board individually on these sticky notes to write down what they consider are the top 3 challenges or areas of growth for the board currently. Okay. And we'll talk about successes too, because we want to hone in on those as well. I'll give you some instructions here. So here are the instructions. Let me move that. All right, so please list one area of growth per sticky. Keep it focused, use a short phrase or a clear theme. For example, unclear roles, like I just mentioned, right? Governance versus management. Questions? We good? Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes and then I'm gonna collect them and see what comes up as themes. just a few keywords, 3 to 5 words. Keep it short, focused. 1 per sticky, top 3. Scary, or do I need to have a mic? Okay, let me turn. And maybe look up here when you're done. And you don't have to have 3. You can do 1 or 2. Just no more than 3.
Oh, you mean these? Yep. Oh. You can take mine. You can take mine too.
Testing. Yep. All right. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to go over here so I can use this space to put them all up and read them. And you can help me theme them out as well. All right. So the first one, can you hear me? Accountability to agreements. Okay, great. Keyword accountability. Love that. Roles and Wait, testing. So roles and yeah. Actually easier so then I can manage that. Testing 1, 2, 3. All right. All right, the next one, roles and responsibility. Who owns the responsibility? Governance versus operations. All right. So roles and responsibilities. I'm just going to put it here. I'm going to start creating themes across the board. Priorities, manageable, learning together. Okay, learning together. It's probably a little bit different than roles and responsibilities. Board's role in holding the system accountable. Okay, so we see this one kind of goes with both of these, right? Because it's the board's role, but accountability. So I'm just going to kind of put it floating for now. Avoid outside distractions. All right. Board's role and responsibilities. We'll just go down as we see themes develop. Board culture, board divided. Example, some board members don't know how to say hi to each other. That's okay. We're having an honest conversation here so that we can grow, right? So board culture, I'm going to just make that it's separate, right? That's okay to agree to disagree, but you got to have you have to have mutual respect for each other and know that you're a team. Commitment to community engagement. Okay, I'm going to do that here as community engagement. Focus on end goals, student success. Okay. Clear understanding of policy procedures, right? Policy. And that could also go with roles and responsibilities, but we're just going to create these and see. We can move them. Control in meetings. Okay, meetings. Repeated items taking too much time. Control in meetings? Is that kind of going along the same? Or is that different? We'll put it here for now, and we can move it if needed. I'm going to call that category meetings. Make decisions based on data. Okay. Lack of personal responsibility, roles and responsibilities. Okay. Apply what you learn. I think there was one around. Learning together, maybe? That goes with that. Priorities, apply what you learn, prioritize. And we'll talk here in a moment after I get them all up. Personal agendas. Okay. professionalism. Okay. That could go with board culture. What do you all think? I want to make sure I'm putting it in the right spot, and we can always move them. That's why they're stickies. Lack of respect for each other. Board culture. Lack of strategy. Could go, where do you think? Categories up here. Lack of strategy. Right. And I'm wondering if it could tie to that overall big picture student success. But for now, I'm going to put it as its own category. Make some room for it. Failure regarding seeking first to understand one another versus assumptions and let's see if I can get this. Innuendos, lack of critical analysis of responses, failure to seek, so that's board culture, I would say. Right? Making sure you're understanding, respecting your perspectives. Yeah. Seek to understand. I love that. Data undisclosed. Data undisclosed unintentionally? Data. So we saw another data one. Make decisions based on data. Or that one could move somewhere else. And then higher expectations. Superintendent developing stronger. Further disclosure. Strength. Authorization. Higher expectations. So that's around, kind of goes with accountability, I would say. And setting high expectations. All right. So looking at this, we have some clear areas, right, that maybe need to be prioritized. But let's see if we can bucket some of these. And I'm going to invite the board too to chime in on what this means. Priorities, manageable, learning together. What do you think? Is that board culture?
That is culture.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. Apply what you learn. I think that's accountability, but I want to make sure that, oh yeah, Jenny. Apply what you learn. It's your role to put things into practice. Okay, yeah. And we do see some overlap, right, with accountability. That is your role, right, as well. So is everybody wanting me to shift accountability to roles and responsibilities? Or is that it's separate?
We are.
That one goes in both. What, sorry? I heard somebody say something.
Dysfunction.
That is our function. The role. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I wrote the.
Okay.
I wrote that the accountability sticky, accountability to the agreements, and I was referring to the operating agreements.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot in the operating agreements that touch on different things within the stickies.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that kind of goes with the accountability piece, right? Okay.
Was specific to the operating agreement.
It was specific to the operating agreement. Okay. Gotcha. So operating agreement's almost like its own thing. Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
Yeah. All right. What about this one? Avoid outside distractions. What do you think, or is that its own still? We can leave them as their own as well, but I wanted to see if there's any other buckets. And if if you're agreeing with what's being placed up here.
I'd like some examples. I don't know what that means.
Avoid outside distractions.
Yes, which is misinformation that is cycling, you know, to community members, to board members, because like we have our roles and responsibilities and we have policies and procedures that we're required to follow, all of us.
Yep.
And then, but that I believe is also with personal agenda because it's like people don't have, it's, those two kind of go together because it's, if you have misinformation, but then also if you come in with an agenda, you're not focused on your intended goal or strategic plan, which is our end goal, which
Yeah.
is student success.
Yep. And I mentioned that when I was referring to the research, right? That's up there as creating sometimes negative impact, the personal agendas. And it's easier said than done, right? Especially if you have parents coming to you, community members, you name it. Or even if you have insight or kiddos with the district, right? Removing that hat. We talk a lot about that when it comes to the role of the board and how you have to stay focused on the systemic level and not bringing in your personal, not experiences, but your any personal things or what you're hearing from outside. Yeah.
Because that's also distraction because we're not.
Gotcha.
Because then we can't misguide our roles as board members and as parents because they're two separate things. There's two separate roles.
Gotcha. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'd like to rebut that.
Yeah.
First of all, you can't separate your personal experience from, it's constructivism. We know that teachers bring their information.
Yeah.
Second of all, I don't believe any of us here, personal agenda means undisclosed agendas, right? I think we all come with priorities and we've all been forthright.
Yeah.
And I'm a little troubled by the broadness because I'm not sure what that, things mean, but I really, as far as critical analysis of this, I'm going to go ahead, seek first to understand. I think that there's been personal, and again, how do you separate personal, right? And that's where I'm frustrated with the public having fears about me or concerns or allegations that nobody came to me directly to ask, right? And that it's my responsibility, if I feel like I don't understand some things with an individual board member, it takes courage and it takes like we're not all busy, right? It's inconvenient to have to do that, but it blocks off the flow of energy to do that, right? And it creates mistrust when we're not understanding. And as I've gotten to know each one of you individually, I see strengths and weaknesses. But once I understand the strengths, I have more compassion for the weaknesses, as I hope you would for me, right? So this is very complex,
Oh, yeah.
right? It's very
is.
complex, and there's no simple answers to any of them. But I appreciate this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here for, is to have those type of conversations. And if seeking to understand, I love that. I use that as well. Because need to understand, what does that mean and how is it showing up, if it is showing up. Any other board members want to chime in to what has been shared?
Yes, I mean, I think when it comes to separation, I think an example of that would be, like, if I'm a parent and I go to my kiddo's school, I'm there as a parent. And that I am able to separate those roles.
Yep.
And that when I go to a school function and I'm there as a school board member, that I'm there as a board member. Like that's what it means to me.
No, thank you for clarifying. I would agree with that.
But I also hear that you bring all of your experiences into spaces, but we need to be able, for example, if teachers approach you, if I'm volunteering in my kiddo's school and I do that frequently and I have staff approaching me, I have to set that boundary. And what is that boundary and what does it look like? Because I'm opening the door to say, hey, that's okay. which is not okay because that falls under roles and responsibilities, in my opinion.
Yes, of course.
I think when I think of lived experiences and leading as with lived experiences, in my opinion, I think it's very different than bringing a personal agenda. So I see those as two different things.
Yep.
I think bringing and leading with our lived experiences, I don't think that's something that you will ever go away. And I think that's something unique that we all bring to the table.
Absolutely.
When I hear or see personal or what is it? What is it? say?
Agenda.
Personal
Or
agenda.
Or avoid
think it-
outside distractions.
Yeah, it's more specific to like if you're here as a parent or wanted to run for the school board because you wanted to change this policy, right? Like that is more of a personal agenda as opposed to you're really advocating for 5,400 students
Right.
and what that means that when you're trying to make a decision for that.
Right.
That's how I see those two things. But lived experiences, like, wow, we all bring a lot of unique lived experiences to the table, for sure.
And we're all community members and we all have individual experiences with the district. And that's why we're here and we're not asking somebody from Newburgh or somewhere else to come.
So what I'll chime in as well. Thank you for saying that because we also do say that when I do trainings with boards, like you all do have different lived experiences and perspectives. That's why there's individual board members and not just one board member that you have to be able to seek to understand, right? And I think what you just said, Jenny, is such a good example of removing that. And so if you do know of something, just not focusing in on that, that's what personal agenda is. When you have like a focus, like, oh, I heard X, Y, and Z is happening, we need to fix it. It's more like, okay, well, what is it at a systemic level? How is this impacting all students? Is this impacting all students? Bringing it back to that systemic level, which is your role, governance.
May I add, it's that I come in with an agenda, like priorities to the exclusion of new input. Where I'm not open to the new data to alter that. But I again would come back to, we all have priorities. And am I looking at individual benefiting of myself? That would be a personal agenda. However, the thought of somebody coming here to not believing that they're benefiting everybody by their personal bias, I give them that they really think it's the best way. I would sometimes strongly disagree with those stances. But anyway, not to belabor, sorry.
No, you're good. And again, this is what the space and time is for. And the end goal is for you all to move from, I'm going to be really honest and transparent here, dysfunction to functional. And it's not, we want you to improve. I want you to improve. Like I said, I want you to be a model, in the next year, I run events. I want you to come and be like, look, and this has occurred. We used to be dysfunctional, but now, man, we're thriving, right? So focusing on that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to ask others to chime in if they want to, so that we hear from everyone. So if any other board members who haven't spoken want to add anything to the conversation around personal agendas, how you interpret that, this is the time.
Well, I would just reiterate that someone who comes in with a personal agenda comes in with their own plan and their own mission, and they come in with a agenda saying, okay, when I get on the school board, this is my plan. This is what I seek. This is what I propose to change. And so they say, this is my agenda, just like you have a meeting agenda. This is what I want to change. This is what I plan to facilitate. This is what I see wrong or right with the school board, with the school district. And they have what they hope to derive out of obtaining a school board position. And I don't, that doesn't resonate with me. So, I mean, I'm not really sure. And I don't see that with a lot of individuals here. I see more with, and I see things, definitely manifesting through different policies that people might be
Mhm.
strongly opposed or for.
Gotcha.
But definitely no one is coming in here with agendas when they arrived. It is, I mean, the thing that I have really seen is really that they're for the students.
Mhm.
And that they bring a wealth of experience,
Yep.
living in the community.
Mhm.
It- That's my personal experience.
Thank you,
from what I
Courtney,
see.
for sharing that. What about, so maybe I'll, if it's not personal agendas, and maybe it's just that terminology that's not.
I have
Yeah.
one more
getting-
comment on that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
of course.
Can you talk to me about if a publicly elected official runs on an agenda and gets elected on that agenda and the public supports that agenda, aren't they, doesn't the public depend or expect that publicly elected person to then implement that agenda?
And that's why it's very important for board members, especially when they're running for the first time and wanting to be on the board, to understand their role in having something change. Because again, they're an individual board member. You have
Sure.
other board members. And so and that sometimes does get missed. It is really important, again, for those who are running for board positions to understand, because if they are using that as the platform, right, to get elected, once they're elected, usually what we find and what I hear from boards, like, oh yeah, no, I can't do what
Yeah,
I said I could
absolutely.
do.
Yeah,
So
there's no way that any one of us could have
Right.
that type of impact. And
Right.
so
Right.
I was just wondering if you, thank
Right.
you for commenting on. I
Of
was-
course, yeah, I mean, that is something that we
But-
try to make sure, if you're running for board, understanding the roles and
I
responsibilities.
do have to be honest with you though. I don't know if right now, but
Yeah,
with your feedback, I feel like you're just lacking more specific examples.
Okay.
I was having a really hard time connecting some of these things with my observations in our meetings, or actually even some of these examples here on the board.
yeah,
So,
and that's what thank you,
Yeah.
I will try to give more specifics. But I'm a facilitator, and I want to make sure that, you're the ones who are in the board, and that's why I'm inviting for you to also interpret, so then I understand too why this got placed on the board. So I will chime in and give you then like my feedback, or not my feedback, but my interpretation, but I also think it's important for you all to share your interpretation of why this got placed up there.
sure.
Yeah, but I appreciate that feedback. I can work on being more specific. Yep. Mhm. Thanks, Ryan. Anyone else? Okay. So it sounds like maybe this is not happening, personal agendas. And this still needs further interpretation, avoid outside distractions, but we heard some interpretation of what that means from some of y'all. Okay. So I wouldn't say maybe this is then an area to prioritize. I mean, it is very clear, right? The area to prioritize is this, right?
Well, and I think it also fits under board culture anyways, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Do you want me to move that then?
I think it relates.
Yeah. Or with roles and responsibilities, because if you don't understand, what that means, or what your relationship is with the community. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's go down the row unless anybody else wants to chime in. Commitment to community engagement. Again, how do you interpret that, or is that it's still its own thing? Commitment to
Is
community.
that a role and responsibility?
Mm-hmm. Yep. What's your role with the community? Absolutely. Any others? Yes.
Are we speaking are we moving on to a different category?
Yes, we're on the commitment to community engagement.
Okay.
Yep. Unless you want to
Well,
go back.
I
don't know
guess
what that
that is a question for us all. I mean,
Mhm.
is our actual defined role, we vote on policies, we show up to board meetings, but is the actual role and responsibility community engagement beyond board meetings?
Mhm.
Something, just, I think yes,
Mhm.
but I don't know if that's actually, is that written somewhere? I mean, is that in our, roles and responsibility on the website? I mean, I don't know.
I think we agreed on attending. right?
Yeah, there was an agreement. That was the goals.
And as a new member, the school tours and whatnot, I feel like people, and just the reporting per each board member, or meeting, what we've done has been inspiring to me, so. And I mean, remember, people have full-time jobs in addition, and we're volunteers, so I appreciate.
Yeah. And that is a conversation that a lot of boards often ask, like, what is our role with the community? So I think it does go under roles and responsibilities, understanding it's a standard too, under when we do trainings on roles and responsibilities, so.
Can I
I'm
add
sorry,
something?
and it's board commitment number 3 as well. So kind of a big one.
Yeah.
It's board commitment number 3, but the way OSBA has defined it is very different than a board goal we've had in the past. Because we have had community engagement as a board goal before, and it was very specific to how the board was going to engage with the actual Woodburn community. And that year they set, like, I think it was the last strategic plan that was adopted, and they said, oh, we want to make a commitment to go to open houses and pass out our new strategic plan. And so they did that, and then, oh, we want to commit to going to 3 community events where we would have a table and have a flyer with our who the board is and what we do. And so they did that. So it was very specific. When you came and brought this community engagement, it's more of like really big advocate. How do we advocate? And what your role is to advocate. So I think community engagement can look very different.
It can.
I think it just depends really on, for example, that year we had a new strategic plan, and so the board really wanted to make a commitment to share it with the community and get to know people and
Yep.
get to know their faces, and yeah, that was that year. So it could look different.
Absolutely.
But shouldn't we know our roles and responsibilities and the policy and procedures before we become engaged with the community? So then we know where we stand and the proper procedure, because we do want to, represent our community and have like community agenda. But at the same time, we have boundaries. We have our responsibility and roles of where, like, we can't commit and promise, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. No, oh, this is we're going, like Ryan said, we're going in with the community agenda, but we're not, because there's policy and procedures of what our responsibilities are.
That might be an opportunity to have like a shared learning, like, okay,
Right.
let's all define community engagement together, which we did in when the placement, not the placement, but the action plan was created, but having more time to like dive into it, to have the shared understanding of what we're all referring to when we say community engagement. What does it really mean? And so that we all have the same kind of definition for that.
The same talking points too, when you do, I agree with you, Rosie. So making sure then you have the same talking points, and really what you're referring to though is just making sure the community knows who you are and getting to know, right, what the role of the board is. Good opportunity for that. Yeah. Okay. Great. So the last here, focus on the end goal. I think that's just overall, that should be at the top. Like, it just kind of encompasses everything, right? Focus on end goal student success, right? Clear understanding of policies and procedures. After hearing some of y'all, I feel like that's a role and responsibility too, understanding your role with policies
It is.
and procedures. We're seeing clear lines here. Lack of strategy. This one I'm gonna need help with some interpretation. Lack of strategy. Prioritization, is that what was intended there? Lack of strategy. When you
really can go under the one to the left there.
making decisions?
The one, no, to the left.
Oh, to the left.
Student success, that's right.
Ha ha ha. Okay. All right. Control in meetings, repeated items taking too much time. I think that is its own category. How to run effective meetings is where I would categorize that. But again, I'm looking to you all who are on the board, and Jenny and Juan too, who are part of the team.
Kind of borderline roles and responsibilities.
Because we do have an agenda and we set time for
Yeah.
every topic, but sometimes we prolong it and we just sit on it instead of just finalizing it and getting, either moving on or putting aside for the next meeting until we get additional information or do our own research, because Jenny provides us with the agenda ahead of time.
Mhm.
It is our responsibility to prepare ourselves for the meeting, to read the meeting minutes, to do our research.
Mhm.
And yeah, on our own time and on our own dime.
I think that the agenda is just overpacked and we don't always have, we don't know what the public is bringing as
Mhm.
far as time that's due. And because the calendar is full, I think we need to have more special meetings. And that we,
Mhm.
I mean, for us to be here, to 10:30, let alone 1:30, that was a bad call. And we should have just, I mean, $300, $350, $400
Mhm.
compared to the review of the superintendent's annual meeting. That's a, that should have been a no-brainer. We can afford that because that's one of our main duties. And that would be and I didn't say, hey, no. So, but I'm learning, unfortunately, through that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Setting, sometimes I think, what does a special meeting, like, you can do that. Yeah, that's what that's for, even for work sessions too.
Right.
Or when you have to table things, hey, have a special meeting, don't tack it on to then the next agenda, that's gonna be just as full.
And and knowing that we're going into an executive session, I mean, that should just be a special meeting, in my opinion,
Mhm.
if possible.
And it depends, right? And that's what's important, who's setting the agenda and looking at that. Because yeah, and I said that at the beginning, and if I wasn't clear or articulate enough, at the beginning, that's what I was getting at with less orderly meetings. Really understanding how to run effective meetings and how to create more special meetings, and then also prioritize your professional development plan, because I'll be honest, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think less is more. And at the time when this was completed, maybe you were at a different time space where you were working together, and it was based off of the board self-assessment. That's what guided this. But I think for tonight, we want to prioritize, and that's why we're doing this activity. Because board culture is on here, right? And so it can stay on there, but maybe the rest gets removed and it's just one thing that you're going to commit to, which is fine. You can always change and adjust this.
Well, I think we have an opportunity with elections coming up. That,
Mhm.
crystallizing this now is a great opportunity
Yes.
as far as moving forward.
Okay, so I hear this one could be moved into roles and responsibilities, but I think it maybe is it's separate.
I agree.
But it could be a strategy or an action step, and it doesn't have to be that formal. We're gonna get to that, because I wanna make sure this is a document, or even if it's just 3 bullet points on a page, what works for your board, okay? We're gonna get to that, here in a moment, but I wanna first figure out what are the areas.
Can I speak to,
Yes,
the agenda? I think also we need to understand, when we want items or we ask for items to be placed on the agenda,
Mhm.
I think it's important for board members to do their homework on that first before it gets placed on the agenda. And really, what's the purpose of that item on the agenda? And is it going to produce student outcomes? Because I feel like we've had things on the agenda that are not connected to student
Mhm.
outcomes. It takes time.
Mhm.
I've had to go and read on those topics.
Mhm.
And so I really think a lack of preparedness is huge. If
Mhm.
board members came prepared, I think it would help.
Are others feeling the same or want to add to what was just shared?
I'm just trying to think of agenda items that have been added. I'm just trying to, in my head, come up with those examples.
Well, an example is the land acknowledgement. That's an example of an item that was asked to be placed on the agenda.
Yep.
Well, that's a short one. I mean,
Yeah,
are
but
we
how long
talking
did
about the land, are we talking about the buffalo or the
No,
bison?
when I
Oh.
talked about reaching out
Oh.
to our
Uh-huh.
tribal,
I think there's a responsibility to that. Did it take a long time? That was before I
Well,
was here.
I mean, I think we need to consider that, the district uses time and the time invested in that. And are those important topics to use that time?
But there's also been the dress code where we went around the mountain and around the mountain and around the mountain and put it back on and put it back on and put it back on. And people were prepared, and we went like 2 or 3 mountain times around the mountain, and people that was a long time of utilizing space, time, energy, resources, and it was on the agenda. And
Surveys.
it came back and forth when it was dead and resurrected and then back and forth. And since this was created, now you came forward and have put times on there, and things have run much more efficiently since that time. But I think that we still could be more efficient
Right.
with the times that people have on each topic to speak when we go around, the room. But I don't think that there's been the amount of time wasted in meetings that there was when this was created. Things have gotten a lot more efficient since you've put the times on the agenda. But I do think that things are better since
Oh,
that.
yeah, I mean, the timing has helped, but I'm just saying in general, when people ask for items on the agenda, I think it's important to have conversation around that and ask, like, what's the purpose of that?
The overriding, how does this
Right,
impact?
like-
It all needs to
Right.
come back to student outcome.
Yes.
Right,
Mhm.
and there's been times when
Yeah.
it's happened in a meeting and the agenda's been changed in a meeting. And sometimes board members don't know exactly what that topic is and they're like, yes, let's add it and discuss it. So I mean, it's just those things. Like, I think if there's just some preparedness around those things, I think it also helps.
But and in addition to that, thank God we did that when we were doing the statement of, I
Public
don't even
comment?
remember what to call it.
Public comment? Are you talking about public?
After we voted
Oh,
down
got it.
and we said, we need to come back and do that.
Mhm.
And thank God we had done that, because it did deserve reexamination.
So what would be a better way of
Yeah.
putting things on the agenda to demonstrate if it really does weigh out?
Well, you have in your operating agreement that, I believe it's in your operating agreement, and if not, requests for agendas either go to the chair or the superintendent. You could even have a conversation probably with the superintendent who sets the agenda, right, to see where does this fit. I think what Noemi's talking about, which we also don't advise as a best practice, is to wait until the day of the meeting to request for the agenda to get amended, right? Or like to get added. Because then one, that doesn't give the board enough time to research on that topic. So I think having clear expectations on how requests for agendas, and that's for you all to decide, and that's where that operating agreement can come into.
Well, now I'm confused because that's how, for one, I do think the land acknowledgement is an important topic.
Yeah.
But that is how I brought it up. I emailed the chair and superintendent privately. I didn't bring it up in a meeting.
Uh-huh.
I emailed it.
Yeah.
And then the chair decided to bring it up. So I'm confused by,
Well, that
the
is the
chair's comment.
process.
That is
Okay, oh, gotcha.
so.
Yeah, so
Right.
chair
It
maybe.
came up under, I think, future agenda items.
And so I emailed you and to consider it, and you brought it up. And so I guess I'm not understanding how that was wasteful when it followed the procedure. So I
Gotcha. Yeah,
just looking for clarification.
absolutely.
So I don't remember exactly, but I know the superintendent and we talked about it. And so then it was for the board to decide.
Well, I think that what happened was, it was during some discovery.
That's
and
right.
Some further investigation that it was learned that it wasn't in the most advantageous wasn't it?
Right, which I appreciated, but I mean, can we do that before? I guess is my question. Is that something that we can do before?
It became an agenda item.
Yes.
Well, let's not get hung up on this, but that's
Mhm.
not how I remember the timeline. But
Well, that's where research comes in.
Before we
Right.
propose.
Well, I think Ryan, if I can interject, and if I'm understanding, is Ryan is saying he did follow that process, and Noemi's saying that it got added during the meeting. Is that?
No.
No, okay.
Maybe not that item.
Not that item,
So
okay.
what I'm saying is, so it did get placed on the agenda because the board decided. And then Ryan did his research and he then decided that it wasn't in the best interest. Is that that's what I recall.
Oh,
Is that what you recall?
no, that's not what I recall. I emailed you and Juan I didn't bring it up at a board meeting at all. I emailed you before a board meeting and wanted research and provided the research in the board packet. And then and then we voted to vote on it, I guess, to bring it up at the next meeting. And then then after reading it, decided it was not a good idea.
So he declined to move any.
But, that was a while ago. But what I'm saying is I felt like, I guess I just disagree with you. I felt like that was a worthwhile topic. So, I feel like,
I mean, I'm not referring to that topic in specific, but I'm just saying the process. I'm referring to process.
okay.
So what would you say the process should have been different? Because what I'm hearing, I would, if I had something, I don't know what else to do other than what Ryan did.
Right, so it came and then the board decided.
And that's good or that's what?
I don't know, was the board aware of what that topic was, is my question.
The board didn't decide to make it an agenda item.
Did the board not decide to make that an agenda item?
Well, we don't decide that, do we? Oh, well.
I-
So what I would suggest,
Whatever.
rather than
I
harping
don't wanna
on,
get caught up on.
yeah, on like the
I-
past, but if there's an example, you were asking for a specific example, so, I think, that's where Noemi shared that, but
Thank you, Noemi. I appreciate that.
yeah. But I think in general, what I'm hearing is just a refresher or just
Sure.
everybody understanding, what the process is, and then what Noemi's saying here around whatever that agenda is for the board to just keep in mind, how does it impact student outcomes? Is that correct? Whatever that agenda item may be, X, Y, and Z. Okay?
Yeah.
So I added it. And I listed
go ahead.
under overall kind of effective meetings.
Not to, I think if I'm understanding Ryan correctly, and maybe the rest of the board, and so if someone brings a topic, an agenda topic, and the board chair and the superintendent decide, nope, we're not gonna add it to the agenda at their meeting, then I think Ryan did follow the correct process, and if I remember correctly, I think, the board did take a vote to get it added to the agenda. And I understand your role because Ryan, after it was added to the agenda, went and did research and then presented, hey, we're not ready to move this forward. So I think I'm also understanding that you kind of wish Ryan would have done that before it was added to the
Because I went
agenda.
and I did research,
But-
and Superintendent went out and did his research, and then we all came back,
Mhm.
and we invested time onto this topic.
And there was nothing for you to speaking individually with Ryan about, hey, here's my concerns of putting it on the agenda, correct?
No, we didn't do that.
Okay, but that was there was that, and that would go back to that communicating with one another. I want to make sure you understand this information. You know what I'm saying? That is permissible.
And so is that part of the process?
Well, we can discuss that, but yes, I mean, if, boards have to understand that who sets the agenda is the chair and the superintendent. I'm going to go back to what you were saying, because I do agree that as long as it impacts student outcomes, then it should be, if it didn't get placed, right, and there wasn't reasoning for why, right, whether that's even saying, hey, Ryan, thank you, the agenda's packed, so maybe we can add it to see if the board wants to for the next meeting. You could do something like that and being, transparent in that communication. Because I do see the benefits of doing that instead of then Ryan being like, hey, it didn't make it, and then, or whoever, let's not even single you out, I'm sorry, Ryan, but like whoever, right? And that's why then, because you do have an agenda item where you can amend the agenda, and it's for those types of reasons. But you never want it to be a gotcha or a surprise, right? The intent, and usually there's no bad intent, right? So again, it goes back to understanding your roles and responsibilities and operating agreements when it comes to agenda setting that can help the situation.
Okay.
This was,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's doing that. Is anyone surprising each other with?
Oh, I'm not saying you're doing that.
Yeah,
I'm just
no.
saying in general, that's the
Right.
best practice. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not saying that here. That's what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Let me clarify that. Yeah. Yeah. Juan, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna add that, that's why I referenced the operating agreement, because this is really good stuff that was created by the board, to how, identifying like how we operate and how we communicate.
Yeah.
And maybe, coming back to this document might be helpful, and just being sure then moving forward that it has the enough items to clarify how we operate and how we communicate, because there
Yeah.
are things on here that will help the management of a meeting. If a board member believes that they don't have enough information or questions or concerns, either the superintendent or board chair will be notified in advance of the meeting.
Yeah.
So that's where the packet goes out in advance, and that would help like the flow of the meeting itself.
Yeah.
If those things are communicated in advance of the meeting, so that the questions aren't being held until the meeting, and all that information could be provided. And so at the meeting itself, it's conducting the business and moving through the agenda items pretty quickly, because all the business gets conducted
And-
prior.
Yeah, and I'm remembering now, there was a topic that was added that same day, and after I debriefed with Superintendent Larios, he didn't feel like he was prepared to stay and share as much as he could have had he known in advance. So, I mean, I think we started providing that operating agreement in our board meetings as well.
Yeah, you have developed the tools, I think, just when things are moving quick and you have a lot, going back to those, referencing those materials. And if it needs more clarification in terms of that process, maybe the operating agreement is too, what's the word? I'm blanking out on it. Not broad, I guess, or just vague. It's vague and doesn't give clear guidance and direction, then maybe we need to go back, or you as a board need to go back and refine that a little bit more, fine tune it, right? The operating agreement. Where would you, Fawn, you said operating agreement a few times, and I'm just gonna throw it up here, but if you would categorize it somewhere, do you have a category for that?
I think it would impact culture, it could impact the agenda setting, and it would impact the roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, kind of
So
floats around.
It has what's the board's expectation, what's the superintendent's expectation?
Yeah.
And if we need to define that more, we could define that more, but it would help then understand what each group's or each superintendent and board's responsibilities are at the board meetings or in general, it's kind of like our norms for ourselves and for each other.
All right, board, anything else? Clearly, there's roles and responsibilities, board culture, and then it sounds like this might be the third maybe area to focus on is how to run effective meetings, agenda setting. There's a lot there.
And we do read the agenda. We do accept the agenda. And yes, that if it's full, then that's the time for us to say, let's move this agenda item to the next meeting. So we're not here till 10 or 1 in the morning.
Correct, but we don't know when we're accepting it, right? Like, we didn't know that we would be clear into long overdue, right, when we accepted it.
But that's when we read it beforehand
Be
and
of
come
the-
prepared.
Well, we are prepared, but we don't know.
Have a copy.
I was prepared, I understood. I didn't know it would take until
okay, good.
1:30 to get out of here.
I think.
And when I
have
said,
one. I have one.
let's move forward,
I
I
have another
certainly
one on
didn't know we'd be here another 3 hours.
True.
As a new board member, right?
a-
I
I have
haven't
an
been through
electronic
those
copy.
before.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be nimble if in fact we get to that with no blame. It just is. And then we take appropriate action and not be worried about micromanaging
board have a copy
pennies.
of it? Okay, great.
There was
Um,
another
I think
meeting
this'll
that
be
we
fine.
had
Thank you, though.
where we were going to debrief public comment, and it said there on the agenda that we were debriefing public comment, and so we were going to respond to the public comment that was provided, and we were going to go around the room, and each person was going to respond, and each person was going to speak out loud. But each of us spoke, and one of our understandings is that there would be no surprises. And when we went around the room, one of us had a written prepared statement that we spoke out. And I felt like that particular night, that was definitely a huge surprise for
Gotcha.
me.
Yeah.
And that is one of our board agreements, is that we would not have any surprises.
Absolutely.
And had that been written on the agenda, I would have said, just a minute, I have an issue because I didn't come prepared with a
Right.
written agreement. And so I would have, right at that moment, said, I wasn't ready for that, like you're saying, but I thought that we were each going to equally be responding. And when we ran around the room, each of us, except for one of us, spoke out and responded until one of us had a written, prepared statement. And so like you're saying, we take what's written here and respond appropriately. But on that particular night, we weren't speaking equally as the board. One of us had a prepared statement. And so when we accept the agenda, we take it as it's provided to us. And so we accept it as it's provided. And so in that particular circumstance, it was kind of like a double header because it wasn't provided as written.
And thank you. That would be a really reasonable thing if any of us as a board have a prepared statement that it would be attached potentially. Is that what you're saying, prior to the meeting? And then we know we're just not surprised? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I mean, in that particular case, none of us had the written
Right, and you-
public comment.
And we should have had that.
Except for
Oh,
one
right.
person. And
Right,
the-
I thought the same thing at the time. Like, that would have been helpful.
Right,
Mhm.
and,
Oh,
so
gotcha.
then each of us were responding only what was heard, not what we had seen. And then each of us were going solely on what was, what we were responding to, what we had just
Yep.
heard right
Yep.
at that moment.
Yeah.
And then the agenda said respond to public comment, so each of us did.
Gotcha. So it changed kind of okay.
It did.
And I will say, thanks for giving me some context there. And it's on there, policy and procedures. Public comment is one.
Yeah.
So there's, looking back at your policy, and what we do recommend as best practice is that you stay consistent. You don't extend the time. You give every participant enough time to speak, or like the same amount of time to speak. So 3 minutes each person, right?
Right.
If you cut one off, you cut everybody, at that time. Don't extend it to make it a fair process. And then we don't recommend boards respond after public comment. But again, look at your policy. And so it was up there, and it sounds like, yeah, there's a refresher to maybe look.
So
into
I
that.
will speak to that.
Mhm.
So Juan and I met with OSBA for that meeting and to prepare for that, and we created the agenda together. I was the one who prepared that statement, which I always write notes if I know that I'm going to speak. And I did have a written statement.
I don't think it was your statement so much as the participant statements.
No, I think she's talking about me.
It was
But-
both.
It was both.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, when it comes to public comment, does everybody receive the public comment?
Why not?
Who does? Right. So I don't
Correct, but
get
we should
those-
have,
So I don't get those in advance and read through them. I get those.
it
when-
doesn't matter. I should have a written copy as the board does, so I can follow along visually and be responsive in the same way and understand, oh, they're going off
Yeah.
script.
So whenever we have public comment, I don't know who it's
Well,
from. And
Doesn't matter.
no, it does.
It does. They have until 5
Right.
o'clock.
So what I'm saying is when public comment is received whenever, Jenny places it here.
And we'd like a copy of that as well.
And I don't know, do you email that out to the board in advance?
We don't get it.
Just-
Oh.
Hasn't been a practice that
Yeah,
we've
and I
done.
can add it as well as.
Yeah,
your-
we can
as
add it,
your
you're right.
facilitator and
So then
guidance
maybe that's
leader.
something that gets added. Because I
past
don't
it
read
has.
public comment. I mean, I assume that everybody else received public comment. I remember receiving public comment I don't know what happened. I didn't realize that you were all just listening. I mean, I was listening to it and just reading it. That was my first time reviewing the public comment for that day. So I didn't read anything in advance.
Yeah.
But if that is a request, that's something that,
Well, I would
Yeah.
say, I'm not on the policy team, but there is updates usually around public comment and going to your policy. I haven't seen it as a practice either. where, a common practice where you receive and they have to follow the script, right? So it sounds like maybe there's a need to look into public comment.
For that, normally we don't respond
normally
to
you don't.
public
Okay,
comment.
okay.
But at
Yeah.
that time, we were,
Gotcha.
OSBA
Oh,
was like, you're probably going to have a lot of public comment and give your board an opportunity to respond.
okay.
And
So
so
we
that
ran
is,
around the
so
room.
that was the first time. So it was an option and
Oh.
it was like, it's an opportunity to share if you like.
Okay, I don't know who at OSBA, but that is usually not the best practice. And again, we're not placing blame.
Right,
here.
and I think it
Yeah.
was specific to
that
a hot topic.
situation. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that normally doesn't happen
yeah,
in
but-
other meetings.
yeah, and I would maybe have given different recommendation, but let's just move on again. But
mention
this is
something, Janet?
important to have these conversations though, and I did add public comment to policy just so we don't forget about it. Yeah.
Something I learned that night is one of our practices that we've been following since COVID. It all started with COVID because we shifted to Zoom right away.
Right.
Is we did receive public comment in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just to prepare. And then I think at the time when people were on Zoom, I would forward it to them so that they had something in front of them.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been a policy that we've revisited since then. And it's actually on my to-do list of like, I think right now it's
Mhm.
not a good time to revisit the policy when we're almost ending the school year. But at the board retreat,
Mhm.
I think it would be an
Absolutely.
appropriate time for the board to discuss, hey, here are the procedures that we've been following for the last 5 years. What do we want to see different? How do we want to change this? Does our policy need to be updated? I wouldn't recommend right now for the
Right,
board
right.
to change
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something just because of one meeting,
Right.
but really look at it overall.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it's because of one meeting, and I think that we can ask, like, put it on the agenda for that board retreat would be.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So I
going to be
put
on
it
there.
up there
Yeah.
so we don't forget it, and I put it right next to policy. All right, how much time do I have?
You have.
And
20
it's okay, I
26
want.
minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna transition from the successes and maybe we can end with the positive note here. And this should be all a positive learning experience with that end goal of continuously improving. I'm gonna skip us to this because I want to hear from you all, how can we improve this plan? Is it working, is it not working? I will apologize if I made it too complex. Simple, less is more. And I think that's what I would offer for this group too, hone in on just a few things. And the school year, just like you mentioned, is about to end, but maybe for the board retreat. But now you see some clear, and it's still on there, right, board culture. So I want to hear from you all. How can we structure this professional development plan to ensure it is focused, it is measurable, and it aligns with your goals and includes clear timelines and accountability, and aligns more specifically what we've been discussing tonight, right? And what I mean by structure is even, and this is just popcorn style, anybody can chime in. What I mean by structure is, does it need to be a formal document like this? Can it just be, and I have seen other boards just have bullet points. It's up to you what works best. But I think focusing on one thing or two things would be a good starting point instead of, oh man, how many do you have on there? Action steps, I think you have a total of
We have too many.
too
Yeah.
many. Yes, I would agree as your facilitator. And again, I apologize. And at the time, that was the board self-assessment guiding, but let's not harp on the past. Let's focus, let's move forward, let's improve together, myself included. So thank you for the feedback as well for me as your facilitator.
And that's why I think our end goal has been lost. The focus,
Mhm.
which is student success, it's been lost with
Mhm.
all this additional
Totally,
distractions.
totally. I'm just gonna put it up here. So what are just, based on what we just discussed and seeing those big categories there, what are two things that you want to commit to? What's next? Can be very simple.
We
I
didn't,
think we should start with.
I didn't feel like we even touched on critical thinking with regards and understanding statistics and data that's being presented. I think that I have questions around that, full disclosure. And I think some hard looks need to be looked at that, so the board is understanding what is in that data and what isn't. And I would say that understanding the data being provided to us and what data we want, so that when people come, they have the data, rather than saying, well, we can get that to you, right?
Oh, yeah, that was
And-
this one.
Yeah,
Yep. Let's just put data on there. And actually, I just did a training on the board's role on how to use data for student success. And I think the monitoring plan, and I think I said it at the beginning, maybe needs to be looked at a little bit and prioritized a little bit. Because it's a lot there too. Just like this document, you all said, that's a lot of action steps. You might have too many measures as well in the monitoring plan.
Well, we do have a work session coming up on June 10th per the monitoring plan.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, a good time. It sounds like the board retreat will be a really good maybe opportunity to cover some of these areas. Yeah. So what do you want? What does the board want? You want a formal doc? Do you want?
yes.
And I'm asking the board, and Jenny, yeah, please.
And when you talk about formal doc, is this for next school year? I think one of the complex things here is sometimes the dynamic of the board can change so fast where we have 2 resignations back to back, right? I think half of you took that survey back in over a year ago and came up with goals that now you have to accomplish when that wasn't what this board specifically said, hey, we want to work on this together. So I think that's the complex piece of it.
Yep.
And I think OSBA did go very complex on like how you're initiating that survey, because it used to be more simple. Like 10 years ago, it was a lot more
It
simple.
used to be 5 standards, yeah.
And now it's very complex. And I do understand that it's very aligned to research. I acknowledge that. But when we're talking about people that are experts in other fields and are here for heart and, we have to really come back to the basics of what are our goals together, right? We have one really expert between among us 7 that really is the educational expert, but the
Yeah.
rest of us, we're leading with our heart here.
Yeah.
And how are we setting goals where we are going to learn what your role and responsibility is? And even for me, I think about what can I learn every year to support you? And next year it could be a different board. But really bringing back to the basics of,
Yeah.
do we want to focus on community engagement? Do we want to focus on roles and responsibilities? And even this year, you had to watch a lot of webinars, which a lot of those webinars are actually sessions at OSBA conference that are given in the summer and in November.
Yep.
So I think even that can just be even taken care of there.
Yeah.
But that would be my suggestion is,
Yeah.
If you're asking this board right now to make up goals for 2025-26, we don't know if this is going to be the board sitting
That's
here.
true. It's
That
election
is
year.
true.
Well, what we can do is we can put feedback or suggestion, that to the new people, that these were things learned over the course. So they're primed, and I'm just looking back over, and you may or may not, I am not recalling have this really being clear around the current growth goals as far as we as a board, as a part of my onboarding. I had a lot about clarifying the board role and all that, which this would have been a helpful thing probably, because I might have been able to speak to it sooner.
Gotcha. Yeah. And usually those documents do get revisited during board retreats. But again, that's like an onboarding thing, right? When you have new board members, making sure they're getting up to speed and have these materials, the board operating
Right.
agreement.
And I probably should have just had an appointment made with Juan at the very beginning, and with Juan and Jenny. I think that would have been helpful, and I want to take, responsibility on, I could have initiated, I kind of did, but didn't follow through. But it would have been helpful as you guys just telling me we need to do this.
Yeah.
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 Or maybe with Noemi or whatever, just to go over this and help give feedback on it.
Right. And thank you, Jenny. I appreciate what you're saying because, and this is a question for the group then, because you also want to, whoever, if you get new board members on board or not, we don't.
Well, you will, because I'm not rerunning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a little bit of a shift. Then, you know, do you want to have this decide now and then chime in and get the others up to speed? Because I think you want to be at a spot where you are set up for success, right? And have those new board members coming on also set up for success and not confused or, right? Because it's a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Especially if you're running for the first time and especially if, yeah, it's a learning curve, I will say that.
And so what
I
is your
think-
recommendation?
What were you gonna say? Hold on, Juan. Were you
Oh,
gonna say
I just
something?
think that this, exercise has, illuminated a couple different things that are really like pressing for the current board.
Mhm.
Like two areas of focus. And so I don't want to lose that,
Mhm.
especially
I
if
agree.
you move forward,
I
regardless of who might be here. We want to like, okay, not let this look learning
Right.
escape us. So somehow we need to capture that.
Yeah.
That what we've learned from this year, what's been successful, what have been those obstacles that have prevented,
Yep.
maybe the board functioning as high as we'd like it to be, all of us, contributing to that success. So we don't want to lose that, like
Yep.
learning from it, because I hear learning over and over and over. And like, if we're able to think about this narrow and get narrow and, do a few things, chunk it off. There's, the board has 12 different standards. That's a lot to try to
Yeah,
do.
it's too.
And if,
It is.
we focus on a couple and
Right.
we, really learn about those over the course of the year, it could help us be strategic. It could help us be, manageable in our agendas. It could help all these things. And so I just don't want us to lose this work and this thinking from tonight, moving into the next board. This is valuable and we need to like capture it and
Yeah. And I would agree with you as well.
And I was going to say, culture and roles and responsibility are perennial, that it will apply to all board members,
Absolutely.
regardless, new or old. So
Yeah.
that could just essentially stay there regardless.
Yeah. And
I
I guess,
agree.
I would ask then, like, what is one thing to address the board culture?
The other thing about that is that the new board can either keep these agreements or create their own. And if it takes as long, it could be December before they roll out their new agreements. And so
Mhm.
this will be their operating agreement all the way until maybe December. So if
Mhm.
we can, encapsulate the most important things
Mhm.
Yeah.
like you're talking about,
Yeah.
Superintendent, I think it's very important for us to at least isolate the most important things.
Boil it
tonight.
down.
I agree. So what is that? What would be the narrow focus?
Well, I think communication amongst board is an overriding, it's a cultural, it speaks to procedure, it
just gonna throw
speaks
things out.
to,
Roles and responsibilities.
well, yeah, I guess, roles and responsibilities about just being clear with one another, that we're operating as a more effective board and that we're not, that we're managing not just the information, but our processing of it with one another, and we're not leaving things unsaid. And I think that that would engender more respect and trust in one another and appreciation for agree to disagree, and that you can better understand what's motivating the other person, versus being left with, that didn't sit well, and then we come back and it's still there. I think that I don't see anybody here acting in bad faith, and that's just a functional organization.
And I think also what's connected to all of those things is personal responsibility. And by that, I mean, if you are a new board member, I think you owe it to your constituents in the community to do what you need to do to learn. I mean, we can watch webinars, you can attend conferences. That's just a very small piece of the roles and responsibilities. But then there needs to be personal accountability. And we have to apply what we learn and put it into practice.
Well, as the newest board member, I can attest that I put in hours and hours. And going over this, it was fairly straightforward. It made sense. I did reach out to people for clarification when I needed it. And I don't think I put the time into it that Noemi, I know, does, and I appreciate you having done that. I think that certainly I'll take responsibility. Could I have done more? Certainly, you can always do more. And it is a good thing, and we want to just encourage one another to be doing that. I don't think I would, and again, I think it's our responsibility to ask for help. It would have been, had I known, you don't know what you know until you know it. I should have asked to, I need to set up in a meeting, and if you recommend the chairperson be there, I'm open. And as a person who's coming in who hasn't run, it is a different set of circumstances.
And also the district pays OSBA a service, right? For each board member to have access to OSBA consultations.
Right, and that might have been helpful too, to have them reach out to me.
And I'm just curious, like, how many of us have used that service? I mean, this is like my 6th or 7th year, and I utilize that service quite frequently.
Right, and I think you did recommend that to me at one point, and so I guess I knew that, but I wasn't quite sure what that would look like.
Yeah, awareness of what services OSBA
Right,
offers.
and
Yeah.
I did appreciate Jenny, really reaching out to me, and hey, Lisa, heads up on these, what you did do. But you don't know what you need till you know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think this board, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the last time you did a roles and responsibility together was a while ago, right? When was the last time you did a roles and
Well, I think in
responsibility?
January, well, one, for those of us who attended the conference
Right.
or conferences.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I believe we rewatched a webinar, I believe.
Right.
January or February.
Different than doing it all in one setting. I don't think I've done, and I will say too, if I did it,
You did,
right, which was last year, right, or last summer. Yeah, and our R&R has changed since then, our roles and responsibilities, because we also want to continuously improve as well, and provide the latest research. So that R&R, yeah, no, like there's a newer one, it's more interactive, it gets to the root of this. So that might be the step. Just do an R&R together with your new board members, and maybe it's as simple as that, y'all. I don't want to put a ton of things on a document. I think start there would be my recommendation, and then we can see from there. Thoughts, comments? Because that would address all of that.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. We can even during board retreats, was that my 5-minute warning or that's my time's up? I was like, is that my 5-minute or my 0? But I think this is a good closing spot too, but that would be my recommendation. And we can go from there, and making sure it covers these areas. I mean, during R&R, we can even carve out board operating, revisiting that. And it sounds like you're recommending doing that at a board retreat once the new board members come on board. Thoughts, comments? Not to say this is out the window. You all have done a lot of great work, and maybe let's end on a high note here. What are some successes? Let's just go around the room and share. What is a success? Let's go backwards. And that's part of being a facilitator. I sometimes switch things around on y'all. Board's current top successes. Just one. I heard one already earlier. Let's just go around the room. Let's end on a positive high note.
I think although there's a lot of room to grow, we all have grown, and I'll acknowledge that.
Thank you, Ryan.
It also shows in the students' test score improvements and attendance. Of course, it hasn't improved quite as much as we'd want it to, but it has improved from last year to this year. And yeah, data sharing, we've gotten more than we have before. Of course, we'd want more feedback, but the feedback has been a lot more better than the previous years.
No, or anybody. We can go popcorn style as well. Juan, Jenny.
Yeah, I would like to second that. Just in the board's actions in years past, I think that there is a request of more data, and it's being given rather than just it's a report of here it is and it's going. We want to see the numbers, and I would continue that. And again, that really critiquing it, a more in-depth critique of the data would be a goal that I would suggest.
And I would agree with that too, but maybe some sort of training for board members on how to read
Mhm.
data.
Yep.
And what it
Preparation.
looks like.
We call that how to use
Statistical.
data effectively for student success. I just did a training last night
Oh,
on that.
yeah.
Mhm. Jenny?
I think one of the top successes is that they're here. They're here. They're here. You show up for students. You know, like I said, we're here because we care and we want to make our community better. And if you don't do it, then who's going to? And I really admire that of all of you. It's not easy being a board member. I recognize that. Yeah, that's a huge success. Huge success.
I agree with Ryan's comment is, that from the beginning, we have grown so much learning about our students, about each school that we get the opportunity to serve, because we are serving the students, we are serving the educators, we are serving our families, this community. It is an honor to serve them, and we continue to learn more and to grow more. It's an opportunity to serve on the board.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think all the different school visits have been a success. Being there, present together, and learning more about the what's available to the district or to students in the district. I think that's been a successful time well spent by the board, and just the stamina and resilience. It's but through ups and downs of the year and the challenges, people have continued to persevere through it all. So kudos to that.
And I'll end, I think everybody shared, right? Did everybody share? Okay. And I'll end by just saying thank you for allowing me to do this facilitation and for the honest and open conversations. They can be hard, but this is how you're going to grow and learn together. So I appreciate all of you for the work you're doing. It is not easy. I acknowledge that as well. And looking forward to seeing what this board does moving forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Go, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for the conversations and sharing and participating in the development plan review. We'll be moving on to our next agenda item. So we have the board action item, and item 1 is the Bison Art Project. And who will, oh, Casey, okay, okay. It sounds like Casey will be presenting that.
Janet, quick
Oh.
question. Are you going to keep all the sticky notes for?
Or have them written up. Is there a way we could get them written up in a document of some kind, or?
While we're transitioning a little bit, I'll give some context for the board on what's in your packet tonight. This is the really exciting opportunity that's been shared with the board a few times to provide a bison monument out by the high school, a really prominent location. There's information in your packet with the rendering and some background information. But this commemorates the historical find of the bison antiquitous that was found out there in the high school property, and the work that's been done by teacher David Ellingson over many years and his digs. So this would be a really special opportunity to commemorate that as an historical site. And the city is graciously providing the monument that will be installed and maintained by the city. And just a really cool opportunity for us to capitalize on.
Yeah,
And Director Woolley, if you wanted to add on to.
Chair Legoski, Board Member, Superintendent Larios. The only thing I will add is that the city has been very collaborative in this entire process, listening to everything from placement to the design. They've worked with David Ellingson, who actually with students identified and found it. So I just do want to say that the entire way has been done in collaboration with the city been very responsive about the placement, wanting to make sure it's placed in an area that isn't going to impact any future digs, isn't going to impact any kind of future growth we might have, and would be viewable from the sidewalk with a kiosk so people can see it and identify it when they go by. So a lot of thought and partnership has went with the city, and kind of not only from the design element, but from the placement and the care of the mural as well. So that's appreciated. Mr. Ellingson was here, so he did show it. So just wanted to give him his kudos and his thanks.
So is it the district's responsibility to maintain the area around?
We'll continue to maintain the grass and the area. So again, that was the conversation with the city around the placement. We want to make sure that it doesn't create anything that's difficult for us to continue to mow or clean or whatever. And it's going to be laid out and designed in a way that it'll be easy for us to maintain.
I think that's all spelled out in the drafted agreement. It talks about the city versus the school's responsibilities.
Sorry, I can step up to the mic.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do. So I love it. It's beautiful. And we were here on the front end of it. I remember my kids were just babes and walking over there. Dave was actually one of our neighbors. He walked past my house every day after school. He walked to and from school. I think I love it. But however, well, I hate the word and, we need more. It needs to have an educational plaque where people can read, not just a nice little, it's not an art opportunity, it's a educational opportunity.
And that's part of the kiosk. It'll be placed down next to the sidewalk, explaining the dig, explaining the history of an
Okay.
educational focal point. So that is an element that is included. This is merely we're here, I mean, the board action item is, will we partner with them for it to be allowed to be placed on the property? And that's in and of
Okay.
itself what they're asking. The
Mhm.
kiosk would go on their property, it would be on that side by the sidewalk so people could read it and
Okay.
have the rendering. But that, they were thoughtful in that component of it as well.
Okay, and
And-
is there input or do we get a chance to look at the kiosk before installation?
This work has been brought to us by the city, the Public Arts and Murals Committee. So there's been a lot of work and effort done. So at this point now, it's just like, yeah, do we want to approve this lease agreement
Mhm.
to be able to install it? It's been reviewed by our legal department, and there are no concerns here.
I'm not concerned around that. What I'm concerned about is that it not have, I want to see a national or state park quality of a plaque with that a detailed information, because one of my passions is background knowledge. And our community, I feel, is pretty low on that. And I think to tie in, you go to Fossil, right? And you read things. This is that kind of quality of a site. And I think for us to promote excellence within the district is paramount to changing the self-identity of our community as a whole. So maybe that's just something I would like to speak to the committee about, but as a board member, I'm pretty passionate about this.
And I would say that the care and the thought that they've put into the mural will be mirrored in the care and the thought that they will put in the kiosk from an educational standpoint. And so given the examples and the information that they've shared with us about that, I am 100% confident in the city's ability and the Arts Mural Committee to put together a kiosk that's of the highest quality. I mean, if you look at the mural, it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's
I
beautiful.
mean, it's again, I said this when we were talking back turf fields a long time ago. It's a rendering, and it has, artists have the right to kind of tweak the renderings, but having the 3 different bisons, I know that they were talking about, they're working with the different coloring. They want it to age naturally with the weather, so it end up. So the amount of thought that they've put into this, being the size, having the 3 different sizes represented and sexes, and then they will put the same care within the kiosk when it goes on the sidewalk for people to read as they go by. So
Terrific.
you had a question?
Yeah, you kind of answered it, but where is this at as far as final design? And what was the process like to end on this? I mean, I guess maybe that's not for you to answer, but I'm just wondering about the competitive process to come up with this final design, but maybe that's part of that committee. So I was just wondering, how final is this concept?
This is pretty final. This is pretty final.
This is, like I said, this is the final concept. The actual rendering may have some tweaks with colors and such.
Okay.
So the
And-
art
And if
art
a kid
mural,
was playing on this and fell over and got hurt, I guess I didn't read about that in the insurance, like, who covers that?
from a liability
From a
standpoint,
liability standpoint?
I would have to defer to the legal in that document.
Well,
Because
they go
I guess
after
when
both
I
of us.
read about the insurance, it talks about the contractors, the city will cover the contractors who are building it, but what about after? I guess maybe I didn't read close enough, but
I-
but I'm saying if somebody was,
They're saying from a liability
if
standpoint,
if a
Mayor.
bison falls and lands on a kid,
Well, they can't
not
get
gonna
that close
fall.
to it. So, I mean, they should, I mean, it's fenced off
I
on
mean,
one side and
sure.
sidewalk, they could theoretically, yes. But,
I mean, it's mostly for viewing, correct? I mean,
it is
it's
not
for
to get up
getting
close to.
up
You will see it from
Sure.
a sidewalk,
Of
from the
course.
sidewalk.
Yeah, my
But-
children,
No, 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 I
I'm sure
understand.
one or all four of mine would have been liable to doing that. And actually Andrew broke his arm falling off of another animal statue at some point. So that's just wise.
Just wondering.
Wise question.
We can look into that.
Okay. And there was also like sloths and a big pterodactyl and some other things that were found as well. So I feel like, although I do like the buffalo, but there should be potentially a shout out to the Woodburn terror bird or whatever it's called.
Could we add that
In
as
the
a
future?
second stage eventually?
At this,
Right. Yeah, future.
if there,
So let's
and the
circle back.
recommendation for tonight is to approve the lease agreement so that we can move forward with this project. And if there might be future ideas for additions or other projects, we could entertain that at another time. But tonight's recommendation is to approve the lease agreement for this project.
Any other questions?
I like this idea. I just have a question. Is this in conjunction with the safety route project? That,
Two separate projects.
All right, looks like there's no additional questions. We do need a vote. Yeah. So there is a recommendation, and we do need a vote this evening on this project.
So I move to approve the attached public art license agreement permitting the city to install an outdoor bison sculpture.
I second.
All in favor of approving the attached public art license agreement permitting the city to install an outdoor bison sculpture, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries 5-0 vote.
Thank you, and thank you to the members of the Public Arts Committee who has joined us this evening.
Yes, thank you.
Our next agenda item is the flock camera.
So thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I have Lieutenant Kimberlin with me here to talk just a little bit about the project. If you've driven around Woodburn, if you've been between Sherry's and Dutch Brothers, you've seen a black pole with a little solar panel on it, and it's a camera. These cameras have already started to be installed around the city, and it's a proactive policing strategy to increase community safety around kind of vehicle notifications. And so Lieutenant Kimberlin's here to talk a little bit about what the system does. It's already in place, and they're asking for a placement of a camera on the French Prairie footprint that looks on 214 because it is the perfect place to catch egress in and out of the city there on the 214 highway. So again, they maintain it. It's a pole about this size on our property in an area that we will not expand on, we will not build on. There is zero future growth. And so I just want to make sure that part is it. So. go ahead.
Yeah, and this whole project started back in 2022, we saw an increase population and obviously crime going on to include, a lot of vehicle thefts and drive-by shootings. And so we wanted to find a a system that would increase our solvability within our town and while at the same time reducing crime just in its presence alone. So we found a system that's called the Flock Safety System. There's going to be 28 cameras that going in around the city, which has already been implemented and approved by the city council. We've started one of the first ones over by the Sherry's that he talked about. Basically, the camera systems, when a vehicle goes past them, it picks up a description of the vehicle, and the license plate does not pick up any kind of facial recognition or any kind of people, and it does not alert by just a person going by it. It's vehicles only. And the system, the way it works is whenever there's a crime committed in that area, once we have the element of a crime, then we can go into the system and pull out data from that system and look up vehicles that were in that area at the time of the crime occurred. But it's not for traffic enforcement or anything like that. That is not the whole intention. It has to be a crime element in order for us to go to the system and look up and try and find vehicles. Now, another advantage to it is we can also enter vehicles into it with a description and put an alert, because there are other cities that have this system. So anytime a vehicle goes past one of their cameras or one of our cameras, and it sends an alert to that agency or us, if we're the one that put it in, and it'll alert them that that camera hit that vehicle plate at the exact same time. It's literally, I've already gotten alerts, and it is the exact same time that it goes by that camera when you get that alert. And so this will increase solvability within our community. And we specifically wanted to put it near the schools, because in the event of a major crime related to the school, heaven forbid, a child abduction or anything like that, we wanted to be able to go to those camera systems right away and try and solve that, or at least get descriptions of vehicles that were in that area to put it out an alert to all the counties and state around us immediately. And so that was the focus of putting them near the schools. Now, we originally went to ODOT to put these cameras, but they are a big no to pretty much everything. So our backup plan was to go to the school and try and use the property to, again, capture vehicles only, in and out plates, and in the event of a crime, then we could go to those systems and look up for vehicles that were in that area at that time of the crime and help solve our crimes. And it also is a deterrent, because once everybody knows those cameras are in our town, and we will have them covering every in and out of the city. And so once the word gets out, I will guarantee we'll see a decrease in crime, especially stolen vehicles and stuff coming into our town, because those alerts will be going off immediately, and we'll be able to find them pretty quick. So we're asking for permission to use that.
And it ties into the Amber Alert system.
Yes.
It does. Any other city that has put a vehicle into the system for alerts, including Amber Alerts and all that, that immediately will be alerted to us, because it's tied into the NCIC program database and stuff like that. So anybody that puts anything into those that goes by one of our cameras, we will be alerted as well as them. And if heaven forbid an Amber Alert comes in our town, we will know right away. We can start looking for that vehicle.
I appreciate you adding that on, 'cause I think it's one of those things that, it's advantageous to the district to have that there to deter crime on district property, but the aspect of taking care of kids and Amber Alerts and being able to react quickly if there's an abduction or a vehicle that's come through with an Amber Alert, to be able to find that is.
Taken into account when we planned out the camera system locations.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, I have
Oh, thank you, sorry.
I have a question. What is the cybersecurity around this?
It only goes to the cloud. It's all storage is in the cloud, and it is deleted after 30 days. So if we have not pulled out, like say we're looking for a crime and we find a vehicle related to a crime, we pull that data out. Everything else around that is deleted after 30 days.
I would suggest that's too short of a time period as a former investigator, but
It's part of, it's
Yeah, I know.
state regulations and stuff.
the other thing is, I remember seeing 2 bodies outside of our school crossing that highway. And so I would think it would up safety as well, and that if there were to be any other accidents. So I do strongly support this. Are there any other governmental agencies potentially able to access this information?
Yes, any city that has this, which is currently in this state, I believe there's 13 different other agencies that have this in our state. Most of them are down south. Closest one to us that is getting it implemented is McMinnville. That's because once we started getting it, then they looked into it too. So, but across the country, there's approximately 6,000 communities that have it in 42 states. So we could potentially, if say one of our crimes goes to another state, we could, send an alert down there, ask for their permission. So you have to ask permissions for certain states. And then we could view those cameras and have anything that it goes by one of their cameras, it would alert us if we have it in the system.
And so state agencies are available, or federal agencies privy
Not
to it?
federal agencies, no.
Okay. Just out of the concern of our particular,
Yeah, no, it's
that
not.
ICE would be,
No.
would the community would not want that.
No, and it's all maintained by the Flock system itself. There's no, like, police agency or federal
Right.
agency that's.
So they'd have to have a subpoena with a court order.
Yes.
Okay.
How many are currently in use in Woodburn?
Right now, we've only got one. We're waiting for permits from the city for, there will be eventually 28. But right now, we've only got the one. There's the second one's going up over by Arnie. I believe we have a meeting next week to find out, or tomorrow, to find out when the other ones are getting implemented.
Okay.
But
So-
one is live right now.
So we don't actually have any arrests or crimes that have been solved that can be attributed to this camera system yet?
Not yet. No, we don't have them all implemented yet, or all, please, because we're waiting for incidences like this getting permissions.
But maybe based on other communities that have this system, do you have any information on?
Well, I
maybe,
know just recently one in Washington, I believe it was Yakima, they had an Amber Alert that actually they were able to find, because once it goes by a camera, you can literally almost trace their tracks if you have them all throughout the city, and they were able to follow it and get ahead of where the person was going to be and actually stop the vehicle that that had an Amber Alert and an abducted child.
Thank,
He was a step parent, but yeah.
thank you.
Those are dangerous.
Yep.
Does the board have other questions? All right, seeing none, there is a recommendation.
Our
And-
recommendation
Thank
tonight
you.
is to approve the lease agreement for the Flock camera.
I make a motion to approve the Flock Safety Property License Agreement for placement of the Flock camera on our property.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor of approving attached flock safety property license agreement allowing placement of a flock camera on our property, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Aye. Lisa?
Aye. Oh, I thought I,
That would be a 4. And you're still here, Katie?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know, I know everybody's tired, but,
Right, so we have the roofing project.
yes, the roofing projects. So what you have in front of you are the tabulations for the bid to replace the high school small and main gym roof. For those of you that aren't aware, we have squeaked through the last 2 years with temporary roofs because Lincoln was a priority roof before that, and we were able to maintain it with the temporary roofing until now. It's the recommendation now that we move forward and we award this to the low bid. That is what this was determined by. And we begin the process of doing the high school gym and small gyms, so we don't have to continue with temporary patches and fix, which will allow us then to move on to the next roofing project. So we're not in a situation where the district has 3 or 4 roofing failures and not in a position to take care of them. The district has done a phenomenal job, even prior to when I became involved in maintenance, keeping up our roofing and keeping up our structures. But many of you have probably been involved with reserve studies where even though you can sometimes keep things going longer, if you do not have a replacement schedule and try to work on the replacement schedule, you could find yourself in a situation where you cannot, when an emergency happens, take care of it. So $2.2 million of this project would come from the construction excise tax, and then $1 million would come out of major maintenance. You'll see an alt bid in here, and you'll notice a quite discrepancy on alt bids. So it was decided that we would ask what it would, if roofing damage or damage is there, what would be the square footage for the decking? Some people didn't think there was any damage there, so they low bid that alt bid, assuming and taking that risk that there wouldn't. And then others just put a comparable bid on there. It doesn't seem to have that kind of structural damage from the decking. It's not anticipated to, but given the uncertainty of the price of lumber and of accessing this, we put that alt bid in there so we could at least get an idea of what that would be and then lock them into a price in case that happens.
Can you just clarify the construction excess tax?
That's what Director Bishop has talked about the money that we get around the construction around Woodburn. So
Oh,
it goes
right.
does not come out of the general fund. It's not coming from it's not going to stop us from funding projects or people or anything like that. So I did, of course, before any bid was won out, before anything goes, meet with Director Bishop and say, is this something that we're financially viable to do? Is it going to put us in a position? And she said this is well within the scope of being able to handle this project this year and not have obviously it impacts our budget, but not to the point that it'll be a detriment to other things.
Yeah, because we were just going over the budget.
Absolutely. So trying to be mindful and timeful of these projects. We did do a roof analysis of all of our roofs, and we're going to try, there's some of the older roofs at Washington we're working on right now. The way that Washington is constructed, you can kind of do it in pieces, so doesn't have to be as big of a project. French Prairie is probably the next major roofing project that needs to come through, and those are being thoughtful. I know that Sarah has talked about major maintenance in the budget message and how she's moving and making sure we have money. We share those projects, those pending projects with the business department and the superintendent, so we can be mindful and planful of those and try to do those in a manner that are not detrimental to any programs or any other kind of additional issues that may arise.
Could I clarify? So are you saying French Prairie would be after the high school? French Prairie would be the #1 priority and then Washington, or vice versa?
I'm saying that we're going to try to push, there's a couple areas of Washington that we think we can get without a major maintenance.
So patch kind of essentially. Okay.
Try to patch. The problem is we don't want to patch so much.
Yeah.
So that we get like the failures like these you've heard about in Medford. That's everybody's worrying about. You have those kinds of failures because people do those things. So the next priority would be there's a section in Washington that we're trying to figure out if we can get that through with a patch to get that done as part of the major maintenance next year as well. And then French Prairie is 1 to 2 years out. We can probably get 2 more years. So we're going to look at the budget, look at how things are, and plan accordingly to go with that. But that's not secret information. We've talked with the administration there as well, trying to cycle those out.
Did you already do like a assessment on French Prairie and Washington on how much work is necessary there? Or no?
Well, French Prairie is going to be complete redo. Washington, they're going to be able to do some patches
Right,
in
you said
areas that we've
in
done.
sections.
We've kind of, my predecessors were doing some, because the way that Washington is constructed, they can do pieces of it differently. And so they were able to redo some. We just need to tie those areas together, because where they don't tie them together, they'll get some structural weaknesses. So they want to go through and do that. So the 2 major priorities right now are French Prairie and Washington, probably within the next 3 years.
Do you know how much that dollar value is?
I do have that dollar sign. I didn't bring it with me. French Prairie is going to be considerably more than Washington because it's a complete replacement.
But this go ahead.
I was going to say, can I make an assumption that all Anderson, Carlson, all of these are going to be using the same material?
Yes.
Okay.
They should.
Because I really don't like the idea of, or I've learned you pay cheap and you pay twice.
Yeah.
And so by saving $100,000, by going simply by the lowest isn't always the best.
No,
And so I hope there's more than, when you say, because it was the low bid, and that's the only reason we're going with this person, I think we need to think about that more.
so great question. Sorry for my lack of clarity on that. There are bid specifications in which they all have to meet the criteria of the type of materials that they're going to use. So they all have to be, they're bidding on the same
So you're saying
supplies and
they're
materials.
following a plan and spec?
There's a cooperative agreement. It's already laid out in the bid specs, what materials you're going to use. They all base on that. So really they're bidding out what it's going to cost them from manpower and access and time to be able to get that. So yes, it's not going cheap on the product.
How recent are these bids?
Holy moly. Well, they're recent enough that if we don't make a decision tonight, they'll no longer be valid because of the tariffs and stuff. So
Right.
I have a phone call tomorrow morning to say yay or nay. If it's nay, then they won't be valid. We have to order materials before June 1st in order to have these bids mean. So I don't want to say that because I didn't want it, but they are very timely. We just had this done. And so we had it done, and then a lot of the stuff happened that was outside of our control. People called us in a panic, like, we need to know now because we need to order now if we don't order now. And so we're trying to honor that. That's why we're having the meeting tonight. And depending on your decision, will depend on our next course of action.
But this project allows us to be good stewards of those public resources, like which include our facilities. You know, it's been patched, and we don't want to continue to put Band-Aids on something that's like a structural issue that needs to be taken care of. And so this allows us to take care of it so that we're not finding ourselves in a worse situation later on, where now we've had structural damage that's more expensive to repair and to replace.
And if it helps you, Snyder is a reputable roofing company that we have used. They've helped us, and they've had quality product, quality response to a warranty. They've been a good partner for the district.
Okay, thank you.
And the construction excessive tax, is it from last year's projects or current or? You don't know?
I
That's
would
their question?
have to defer to Sarah. I simply go to her and say, do we have the money to do this? And she says, yes. And I said, people are going to want to know where that money comes from and where's this coming from? And so I asked that specificity so that, because the 3.2 million hit out of the general fund is,
Quite a bit.
I mean, $1 million's very significant, but 3.2 is very significant. So when she said that she was able to use that excise tax for that, it made me breathe a little better.
So I have a question. So should, whichever roofing company we go with, I don't know, do like a poor job, what happens then?
Well, they warranty the work.
For how
And then-
long?
Oh, I don't have that off the
Okay.
top of my head.
Typically, it's a year,
No, it's
No?
longer. We've had,
10 years.
it's somewhere, I mean, it depends on the type of the leak, right? So I believe at 3 to 5, it's pretty much like they just come out and they work with it. But if there are some known installation effects later on and they have we can show that there was actually incorrect materials or incorrectly used, or it was somehow a flaw in there, they have supported. That's why I feel good with Snyder. Every project that they've had for us, they have went above and beyond to kind of warranty their project and come out and be a good steward of their product, because they want to help our community. So.
Well, there's the others, we have insurance for this, and it would be the insurance who would be interested in pursuing if they think that there had been faulty work done.
Yeah, we just haven't ran into a situation
Right.
with any of the companies that we've used so far in which a product is under warranty that they have questioned and pushed back on. So the building at the high school, they've been, the company who did that, Triple Wellman, has been phenomenal with getting back to us. Snyder has done some work for roofing at the high school. They did roofing at Lincoln. They've been very responsive to that. So I have no reason to believe that they would not be responsive or helpful in that situation.
So all of our contracts are reviewed by legal, right? I mean, it's pretty much the standard. All contracts are, I mean, everybody's licensed, bonded, all of, just like the general.
Well, and on top of that, there's, they have to, depending on when and where the project is, we're talking, they have to have different kind of clearances if kids are there, so we have to do all
Right.
that stuff as well.
What's the square footage for the deck replacement? And I don't even know.
We
what a
don't know
deck-
if
What
there's
does
gonna
that
be deck
mean?
replacement. So it's saying per 100 square foot, if there is damage, this is the price that
Describe
we'll
the
use.
deck. I don't know what
It's
that
the-
means.
For lack of a better term, it's the plywood that you put down
Underneath?
underneath that you
Okay.
build your roof on. At Lincoln, that was problematic because that was old growth timber that was milled, tongue and grooved. I believe 18-foot sections, which they just, you can't do anymore. And the engineer, when we were trying to replace it, required us to do 100% like. And the only place you could get it was in Canada. And they had a reserve of it. And so finally, we were able to find a solution with the engineer to say, listen, can we patch like this? And they were able to find a structural component. That isn't the same decking up there, so project should be much quicker. It's a different style of roof, should be less smelly. And so we should be able to start it. I could smell it too at home. Yeah. They should be able to start it as, actually, they'll be able to get up there prior to school to place some stuff and then get right on it. And it should not impact the start of school.
Actually, earthquake.
Seismic upgrades?
Yeah, is there any?
My predecessor went through and did seismic upgrades. Probably the most notable one you can see is if you go to Lincoln, you'll notice that some of the walls feel a little bit smaller, and you'll see some metal expansion joints. They're going up. Washington was a little more expansive. Washington is one of our older schools. They had to go down all the way to the basement because the way that some of those things were connecting. I'm going on a little bit, but that has, we are also work with, what am I thinking? As a casualty collection point in case there's an injury. So we work with Red Cross, thank you, to make sure that our gyms are accessible and those kinds of things. And so one of the reasons we went through the expansion and the seismic upgrades is because in our community, some of our churches are pretty old too, right? And so people who would normally go to a church in that kind of need, that might not be an option. So our gyms and our new constructed buildings will probably be some of the last buildings standing in a Cascadia type event. And so we want to make sure that we have those seismic upgrades. So
Although we
my
have a lot of new
predecessor-
construction. We have a lot of new construction in the city that is.
Yeah, and I'm not as worried
supposedly,
about the people
yeah.
in the new construction. I'm
Right,
worried-
exactly. I understand that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Additional
Sorry.
questions? All right, we'll see none. Is there someone who would like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve resolution 25-003, awarding the Woodburn High School gym roofing project to Snyder Roofing of Oregon LLC.
Is there a second?
That was me.
All in favor of approving resolution number 25-003, awarding the Woodburn High School gym roofing project to Snyder Roofing of Oregon LCC? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you,
patience.
Dr. Woolley.
Next, board agenda item is the board calendar. You will see the dates on the agenda. We have May 27th, regular board meeting, June 3rd, second budget committee meeting, June 10th, board work session. We have 2 additional dates to add, and that is Thursday, May 22nd, Bridges School Visit at 11 a.m. Thursday, June 5th at 6 p.m., we have the high school graduation ceremony at the Volcano Stadium.
And that's on June 5th.
Yes.
At what time?
At 6.
6 p.m.
And Thursday, the 22nd, is that the 11 o'clock?
Thursday, May 22nd at 11.
At Bridges?
Where's Bridges? I mean, what is Bridge? I mean, Oh, okay, yeah, the living skills. program? Is that what that means? Or is that the special?
It's our adult transition program.
Yeah, okay.
Next agenda item, we have future agenda items. Any thoughts around adding future agenda items?
I do have a question about the graduation. Isn't there limited admissions or no?
No, I don't think there's any plan for limited admissions.
It's a big place.
We've not had ticketing systems. We haven't, our graduations haven't done tickets per family. It's just been open. So we have a lot of family members and a lot of friends and relatives coming to celebrate graduation.
Except during COVID.
Those are different times.
Yeah, I know.
So hearing no future agenda items, we can move on to adjourning this meeting. So thank you for being here. It is now 8:03, and I will adjourn this meeting.